Scammell was a British truck manufacturer from 1921 until 1988. The parent company was Leyland Motors. Matchbox made a few Scammell trucks. Most of them seem to be in the King series. They manufactured the snowplow for 2 years, from 1963 to 1964, but it looks like they sold it until 1968, so I suppose it probably wasn't a very popular casting, although there seems to be a lot of them out there. This particular one I actually got in a lot of Matchbox, and it was sitting on the back of another truck, and it was a snowplow because it still has the little brackets for the plow in the front, but what are you going to do with something like this? Actually, I had a couple of ideas. So going forward, let's take a look at a real custom creation. This is TimeRider, and I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to have to put it back together someday, so removal of the single post is essential. And what do I really have here? You know, I have the cab of a truck, so in order to make it into something useful, shall we say, I have to have something on the back of it. And with Matchbox, a lot of it comes down to scale, you know, because they use so many different scales that you have to find something that's going to look proportionately correct. And of course, you don't want to take apart something that's any rarer than it needs to be, but there was something that I did have in abundance that looked like it would probably fit together correctly. In my case, that would be the 44C GMC refrigerator lorry. And I had one that I have 4 of them, and I've restored one, and I have one that's in pretty good shape that I am keeping original. Then I have a couple more that I can do different things with. So I have a couple of these to spare. And it has the benefit, the scale is actually much different. The Scammell is at like 1/109th, and the refrigerator truck is at 1/194th. And so it's actually not to scale, but the way Lesney produced it uses the same size back wheels, and once I cut the cab off of this model, it won't matter. The back end will look just fine. I actually had to kind of chuckle when I was putting together this video, watching me take the glass out of the cab. What you have to do is there's 2 posts that come out of the bottom of the refrigerator unit that essentially hold the glass in. And since I'm not going to use the refrigerator unit, and I'm not going to use the glass, and I'm not going to use the cab, why I was taking so much care with this is kind of humorous, because I don't really need any of it. Force of habit, I guess. Well, I thought that the back portion of the refrigerator truck looked like it would work for my purposes. The refrigerator unit itself, I think, was a little bit too big to look correct on the Scammell cab, so I needed to get rid of that, which I have. Absolutely no problem doing. It's really thick. Took me kind of a while to cut it off. And then actually, the hard part is the cab, getting the cab off, because there's so much going on right in the area of the cab. You've got some fenders, and it wasn't going to be just a straight cut off. It was going to have to be at a bit of an angle, because I still needed the base, the floor of the trailer portion to set the trailer upon. And then, of course, I do need to remove the wheels. I removed them from the cab as well. I did that off camera. And then time to drop everything into some aircraft stripper for a while and get the paint off of it. You know, it was actually this project that prompted me to buy some clay, and it really helps to know what's up and what's down when you're filming stuff. But here's the problem that I have. Somehow I have to join these two Matchbox pieces together, and I need them to have some strength. And the only thing that I can think of that's going to allow me to do that is going to be JB Weld. And it takes a while for JB Weld to cure. So I need to somehow hold these pieces perfectly still for like a day. And clay just seemed like the best solution that I could think of anyway. And then I have to file off the remnants of the refrigeration unit. One thing I didn't realize when I took up this hobby was that my hobby was going to be sanding. Starting with heavy grits, because the file takes stuff off in big chunks. And more sanding, working my way down to finer grits. Give the casting a once over. Wanted to kind of soften the edges of the trailer portion a little bit. They were, for lack of a better term, sharp. Just a light grade file. Just take the edge off, right? Kind of like a fifth of scotch. And I don't want to forget, I got a cab here too. And it had like a casting mark that ran right down the middle of everything. So I decided to file that off. And then I went on the internet, because sometimes when you have a truck that has a front like this, it has, you know, two sides that lift up, and I don't know. That must be like an American thing or something. But the pictures showed a nice smooth hood or bonnet or whatever you want to call it. So I filed the casting mark off of that as well. Sorry, my big old hand got in the way. I haven't done that in a while. So then I, somehow, when I put this thing together, I need to have some strength to it. I'm not just going to glue it together. So I got a couple of fairly substantial nails, and I cut the ends off of them. And I'm going to use them to strengthen the new frame that I'm making. So now I got my JB weld, and it's equal parts of each tube, the steel and the curing agent, hardener, whatever you want to call it. And what I'm trying to do is extend the frame that I have, because there really wasn't much of a frame, but there was a little bit of one. You can see it. I want to extend that frame so I have something to attach to the back of the lorry. And you know, you can't solder these things. If you know, I saw a video by, I might have been Bare Metal, where he soldered a crack. Well, this isn't a crack. If I put too much heat to this, it's just gonna melt. And this might not be pretty, but this is the first time I'm doing this, so you know, we learn as we go. Set it aside for a day or two. And one of the things that I learned doing this was that you really have to look at a project like this from a lot of angles that you might not have considered until you start doing it. I don't want the truck to be riding uphill or downhill. You know, I want the wheels and the two frames to be on a plane so that it looks proper. And then I was curious, you know, okay, well, how is that going to look once it's done? So what I had done is when I used the JB Weld the first time, I did this off camera. I just put two little blobs inside the frame on this, the back of this. I knew how I wanted the front to sit in relation to the back. And then once I had it roughly where I wanted, I used some JB Weld to hold it in place. And just so you know, JB Weld is not infallible. I'm going to put a heavier coat on later, but right now what I want to do is just see how it works. So after letting it dry literally for a couple of days, it's time for that first fitting, shall we say. I used a small amount because if I needed to take it back apart again, I didn't want to have to fight with it too hard. And we'll go. I'm happy with the end result. So now I'm going to put a nice heavy quantity of JB Weld on the bottom here to hold those new frame rails into the place that I want them to be. God, it's the giant fickle finger of fate. I've done that my whole life. I don't know why. Must have injured my index finger as a child. Anyway, you know, I really struggled with what color to paint this thing. You know, red, blue, green, and I finally decided on orange. Tack coat, time for some heavier coats. I like the orange. I think the end result, it turned out really nice. It was a good pick. And I did, boy, I kicked around a whole bunch of different ideas where I should go with it. I painted the center of that rear frame flat black. Not that you can see it anyway. And with the back, I struggled as well, and I channeled Fred the paint guy. And I said, if I was Fred, what would I do? And the answer came to me, Fred would paint it silver. He wouldn't paint it turquoise. He'd only do that to an American truck. So silver it is. This cab wasn't very long on details, but I wanted to paint the grille, the radiator top. Everything I saw on the internet, they were usually chromed. And actually, that's what I'm using here. I'm using, you can kind of see my chrome pen sitting on the desktop there. I just emptied some chrome out of it. Not going to bore you with assembly. It was one button screw, a tab, and a small amount of glue to hold the cargo container on. And go back to the beginning here. You know, what do you do with something like this? This is the first time I ever did. And I'm glad I did. And I'm sure there are people who say, oh my God, he cut a Matchbox in half. Oh well, I guess we'll all live and tomorrow will be another day. But here's where I wound up. I think it turned out pretty doggone good. What I call the Matchbox 1644 Scammell cartage lorry. Lesney, eat your heart out. There will be another version of the bench right after this is over. Wish everybody a happy Saturday. This is TimeRider. And I'll leave the light on for you. Thanks for sticking around for this episode of The Bench. That 35B snow track that I'm working on is stripped and ready for paint, and while I was looking at it, I discovered that the tow hook was cracked, so I had to do a little repair on that, but that one's moving forward. You know, the Unimog that I restored actually kind of a while back now is like my second most viewed video. People just love these little things, and I own a red and blue one already that's in pretty good shape, and I don't know, a while back I did a bench thing where I put the new tires I bought for it on. This one's got a busted tow hook, and nope, I'm not going to restore it, but I'm going to do something I think is pretty cool, and I'm going to start working on that one. And then for the heck of it, I threw this on my bench. It's a little Hot Wheels Roadster that I bought out at the flea market for 50 cents or something like that. It's certainly going to get different wheels, and it's not my usual genre, but I like stretching my wings a little bit, and we'll make this into something a little bit different. I think it looks kind of cheesy myself. And then the consortium has spoken for June. We are going to be doing luxury cars, and I'll be doing this 44B Rolls Royce. I heard a couple people toss around Mercedes. You never know, you might see a nice Jaguar out there or another Rolls Royce. But that's it. This is TimeRider. You have a great day.